lot of choice words about Washington, D.C. Let's bring in Lou Shapiro. Lou, I don't want to leave you out of this. You are a criminal law expert, so we want to make sure we get some of your expertise. We've been looking into the same indictment since it dropped, 45 pages, come down to 4 serious charges. As a defense attorney, and given the charges that we're seeing, how do you plan your attack here? I mean, where do you even start first?
You have to think about what the long game is. The long game is not going to be with the jury. The long game is going to be with the United States Supreme Court. Because the short game is you go to a jury trial, you make your arguments, and you have a jury pool that is going to be 80 to 90% Democratic and probably not going to be listening much to Trump's defense. But the actual policies and arguments that will be made that the appellate courts will be hearing are going to have to do with First Amendment. Was his speech constitutionally protected speech? Then there will be the counter argument. Well, there was also conduct, not just speech, but then it gets into the absolute immunity that a president has. As a president, whether it's civil or criminal, any acts that a president does on behalf of the country is protected. He would be shielded from criminal liability. And he will argue that the checks and balances that he tried to do on the country, on the electoral system, was for the benefit of the country. Number 3, there's the advice of counsel defense. As we know, he was surrounded by a bunch of attorneys who was advising him what he could and could not do. A defendant is allowed to argue, I was acting on the advice of counsel. If my attorneys say I can do something and I find out later I cannot do it when it's too late, is that my fault or is that my attorney's fault? So these are going to be the main defenses that we will expect to see down the pike. And like I said, it will be the appellate courts that will be handling it, not the jury.
Haley, your day job is a White House reporter. You're there most days. Take us inside the thought process of not only the White House, but Joe Biden's campaign, because on the one hand, he's been steadfast that the Department of Justice is acting independently. Biden doesn't have anything to do with it, but there's a lot of Democrats here in Washington who feel like he needs to be stronger on this.
Yeah, it's a fine balancing act that the president has to walk, and time will tell if his strategy changes. Strategists we've spoken to today say right now not commenting is the right move. But when we look ahead at what's to come, one strategist we spoke with, Simon Rosenberg, tells us that Trump's legal challenges may very well become more of a part of the argument and the conversation next year, that there's a lot of time left to talk about Trump. But right now, Biden is, as it's very clear, focused on driving home the message of the impact of his agenda. And that's key, as polling shows a gap between the successes his administration is highlighting and his job approval ratings. But at the end of the day here, polling still shows near even numbers in hypothetical matchups between Biden and Trump. So that is the question, is at what point does he need to become more vocal? But right now, he's letting that legal process play out.
Yeah. Avajoy, the countdown to the 2024 presidential election is on. That is the backdrop. That's the soundtrack to everything that we are looking at right now. You spoke to protesters outside the courthouse today. Were there any rumblings on whether this latest indictment will hurt Trump in the eyes of voters, or maybe even bolster his perception in the eyes of voters?
The people who were out here were very vocal about this. We spoke with people who are supporting the former president. There was one guy in particular who had a Make America Great Again hat on, and I pulled him aside, had a conversation with him, and he told me that he supported the former president and he will support him once again because he had a message that really resonated with him. But then on the flip side of this, there is another guy who was visiting Washington, D.C. for a convention, and he told me that he did support the former president for the previous election, but then came January 6th. And then he said he did not support him anymore. He had very strong feelings about that. He said, you know, he felt as if Donald Trump put himself ahead of the country. And so people are on both sides of this. We know later this month that will be the first Republican debate. I heard reporting this morning that the former president is still being asked to participate in that. When you go on his social media, he had a poll earlier this week asking his supporters if he should participate in that or not. So it's yet to be seen, but we will really not know until those first votes are cast.
Lou, I'm curious, what does it take to mount a successful defense of a high profile client? Obviously, the former president as high profile pretty much as it comes. What does that look like for his defense team?
Well, they're going to be conducting mock jury trials, taking sample members of the community and throwing out the defenses that I discussed earlier and seeing what resonates and what doesn't. As trial lawyers, sometimes we lose cases we're supposed to win and we win cases we're supposed to lose. But the key to trying to avoid happenstances like that is trying to figure out what are the types of jurors I need for this kind of case, what theories work, what is easy to explain, what's not so easy to explain. And once you can line up all those items, that puts yourself in a better chance of prevailing. But again, politics plays a big role here. This is unlike any other trial out there where it's almost you have the intersection of politics and the criminal justice system all happening at the same time. It's going to be very difficult for Trump to get a fair and impartial jury in this case.
Yeah. White House correspondent Haley Bull, political correspondent Avajoy Burnett, and criminal law expert Lou Shapiro. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break, but stay with us. There's more coverage and analysis still to come.
After the